the forbidden fruit. Let's identify it. Jeremiah 8:8. How can we say we are wise, and that the law of Moses is with us? Behold, the lying hand of the scribe has turned it into a lie. So how exactly was the law of Moses corrupted by these scribes? Jeremiah 7:22. For I spake not unto your fathers, nor commanded them in the day that I brought them out of the land of Egypt, concerning burnt offerings and sacrifices. By the way, burnt offerings and sacrifices are eaten. It is animal flesh supposedly commanded that we eat. But we see in Jeremiah 7:22 that meat eating, i.e. burnt offerings and sacrifices, were never commanded when God gave his law to Moses. It was the lying scribes who corrupted the law of Moses, as it tells us in Jeremiah 8:8, to include, supposedly commanded the eating of animal flesh in the form of burnt offerings and sacrifices, as we see in the law of Moses. For those who would say that we don't eat burnt offerings and sacrifices, I remind you that we are supposedly commanded to eat the Passover lamb, which is indeed one of these burnt offering sacrifices. So how does God feel about these non-commanded burnt offerings and sacrifices? Isaiah 1:11-16. To what purpose are the multitude of your sacrifices unto me, saith the Lord? I am full of the burnt offerings of rams and the fat of well-fed beasts, and I delight not in the blood of bullocks, or of lambs, or of he-goats. When you come to appear before me, who hath required this at your hand, this trampling of my courts? Bring no more vain oblations. Incense is an abomination unto me. Your new moons and Sabbaths, the calling of assemblies. I cannot have wickedness with celebration. It is iniquity, even the solemn meeting. Your new moons and appointed feasts my soul hateth. They are burden unto me. I am weary to bear them. When you spread forth your hands, I will hide mine eyes from you. Yea, even when you make long prayers, I will not hear. Your hands are full of blood. Wash you, make you clean. Put away the evil of your doings from before my eyes. Cease to do evil. What sin bloodies your hands? Thou shalt not kill, perhaps? Isaiah 43:23-24. Thou hast not brought me the small cattle of thy burnt offerings, neither hast thou honored me with thy sacrifices. I have not caused thee to serve with an offering, nor wearied thee with incense. Thou hast bought me no sweet cane with money, neither hast thou filled me with the fat of thy sacrifices. But thou hast made me to serve with thy sins. Thou hast wearied me with thine iniquities. Isaiah 66:3. He that killeth an ox is as if he slew a man. He that sacrifices a lamb, as if he cut off a dog's neck. He that offers a grain offering, as if he offered swine's blood. He that burns incense, as if he blessed an idol. Yea, they have chosen their ways, and their soul delights in their abominations. So killing an animal is akin to killing a man. Therefore, thou shalt not kill applies to both animal and man. Thou shalt not kill, period. And killing certainly would bloody your hands, as God says in Isaiah 1:15. So why would the lying Pharisee scribes corrupt the law of Moses to include non-commanded eating of animal flesh? It is because animal flesh is the forbidden fruit. This is what Eve, the first woman on earth, saw as being good for food, that Adam and Eve ate, causing the fall of mankind. Not convinced? I'll continue. In Genesis 1:29, God gives his intended diet, and also gives the animals their intended diet. I give you all the fruits of the trees that have their seeds within. This shall be meat for you. And I give you all the plants on the earth that yield seeds. This shall be your food. And I give to all the beasts of the earth, to all the fowl of the air, to everything that creeps upon the earth that has the breath of life in its nostrils, I give all green grasses. Notice that the fruits of the trees is what was intended by God to be meat for man. Also notice that animal flesh is not included in God's intended diet that he gave to man. And likewise, animal flesh is not included in God's given diet of the animals either. Now let's look ahead to how it will be in the kingdom. It says that there will be no killing nor death in the kingdom. so that rules out eating animal flesh, as that employs both killing and death. It further says that the lion shall eat grass like the ox. So we see that in the coming kingdom, both man's diet and the animal's diet have been restored in the kingdom back to what God intended back in Genesis 1:29. We should not be surprised, as God says in other scripture, I change not. After Adam and Eve ate this forbidden fruit, it says that the animals also began to sin and began to devour one another. As we saw in Genesis 1:29 that God's intended diet for the animals was all green grasses, and animal flesh is not included. How exactly does an animal sin unless it is eating something not included in their intended diet given by God? Therefore it was a sin for the animals, just as it was also a sin for man to eat of the forbidden fruit of animal flesh. Now it says that God saw Noah was righteous in all his generations, clearly including his sons and their wives. They therefore could not have been eating the forbidden fruit of animal flesh, because we know it is a sin for both man and animal to do so, and you must violate thou shalt not kill in order to eat animal flesh, and that would certainly not make Noah righteous. The only way he could have been righteous, in God's view, is if Noah was eating the diet God gave man in Genesis 1:29. So what's going on with Noah in Genesis 9:3? Why does God now deliver into the hand of man all of God's creatures, and at this point permit man to eat anything that moves, governed by man's gift of free will to choose, especially when God says, I change not, and thou shalt not kill? Well, we need to keep in mind that God has just finished cleansing the earth, saving only Noah and those with him, a total of 8 people. So beginning anew, this is where God begins to salvage mankind after the fall. God puts 2 paths in front of us to choose who it is we will choose to follow. Either to follow God and eat the diet that he intended for man, that God gave in Genesis 1:29, or to follow Satan and eat of the forbidden fruit of animal flesh that he first presented to Adam and Eve in the garden. From this point, God is permitting man to choose which path to follow by way of his gift of free will. No wonder God says in Genesis 9:2 that the fear and dread of man will be upon all the animals, etc., just prior to God delivering them into the hand of man in the following verse. God knows that some men will choose to kill them and eat them. Now what about Timothy? 1 Timothy 4:1-4, warning of those coming in the last days, saying to abstain from eating meat. Well, as we already know, the lying scribes corrupted the holy law of God given to Moses on Mount Sinai to include supposed commanded meat eating, i.e. burnt offerings and sacrifices, that we know were never commanded by God in the first place. The scribes committed the pinnacle crime by corrupting the holy law of God to include non-commanded meat eating. Therefore, it isn't a stretch to believe that these lying scribes would corrupt this passage in 1 Timothy in order to keep folks eating the forbidden fruit of animal flesh in these last days, that God himself never commanded in the first place. This passage conflicts with God's commandment, thou shalt not kill. So who are you going to believe, God or Timothy? Now let's look at God's intended diet for man in Genesis 1:29, and we'll use clues from John the Baptist's diet as well. And in Luke 11:11, an egg is considered a good gift to give a child. Therefore, we will include eggs also. John's diet was the fruit of the locust tree, honey, and the milk of beasts. And Messiah did say, there is no greater man than John. So God gives man an entire intended diet that includes all of the fruits of the trees with their seeds within for meat, all of the vegetables and plants that yield seeds, all the herbs, honey, eggs, milk, which is your dairy products. What's the common thread in all these foods that God intended man to eat? None of these require killing, violating thou shalt not kill in order to have them for food. The only thing not encompassed by God's intended diet that people consider food, well, animal flesh, beef, chicken, seafood, pork, lamb, goat, etc. It's the only thing that people consider to be food that is not encompassed within God's intended diet for man. And all of these require killing in order to have them as food, and violate thou shalt not kill in the process. Animal flesh is therefore the only possible food that could be the forbidden fruit, that is totally omitted from God's intended diet for man. It's the only possible conclusion. That being said, would you care to know why God purposely omitted animal flesh in his intended diet for man? Well, over the course of each year, the body is completely rebuilt using what the body is fed, while continually setting the old. You've surely heard, you are what you eat. As you see, it is absolutely true. All of the things God intended man to eat are also considered living foods. You'll note that God never instructed man to cook at first. This is because cooking at too high a temperature kills the living enzymes, killing the life within the food. When the body is fed life, the body is rebuilt with life, whereas when the body is fed death, such as animal flesh, as the animal must be killed first, the body is rebuilt with death. Life begets life, death begets death. Man did not die until eating animal flesh, for in the day ye eat of it, thou shalt surely die, because doing so invites parasites into the body, and it causes all the ills of man's body and eventually death. And this is how God gives afflictions of the body as punishment for eating the forbidden fruit. If the body is fed death, it becomes death. If the body is fed life, it becomes life, i.e., it does not die, save for God putting a limit after the fall of mankind of 120 years for the physical life. You reap what you sow. If you sow death into your body, you reap death. If you sow life into your body, you reap life. The Father is within you. It is His Spirit that uses what you feed your body either to build you a dead body or a live body with a maximum prolongment of 120 years, which is before the fall was limitless, i.e. immortal. Now, man is raised immortal after dying physical, and what enables that is the life that the body was rebuilt with by the Spirit of God within. This is truly what reborn is. Transforming your physical body, your personal temple of God, into a temple of life, rather than a death-defiled body into a temple built of death, which the Father will not choose to remain within. This is what the old and new wineskins was about. If you don't rebuild the body with life, when Father's resurrecting Spirit arrives, your wineskin, your body, bursts and perishes. The new wineskin, your body, built with life, doesn't burst, and the body is resurrected. This is also what the Christ was referring to when he said, if you don't bring out that which is within you, that which is within you shall surely destroy you. He was referring to getting all remnants of dead animal flesh out of your body, or it will destroy you. This is what happens when you fast. That is why we're instructed to fast. When you fast, drinking only water, the body flushes your entire intestinal tract, and this is why the longer you fast, the better. Once the body has been flushed clean by fasting, then the body is fed with the live food that God intended, and over the course of a year, the body is rebuilt by God's Spirit within from that live food that the body is now being fed into a reborn body built from life, and new wineskin that will not burst. You will read about this in Messiah's own words in the Essene Gospel of Peace. And that is the wisdom of God, and why dead animal flesh was purposely omitted from man's intended diet. Repent and live. It has always been about eating the forbidden fruit of God's innocent creatures from start to finish. But the lying scribes guide people to follow these endless genealogies of Cain and Abel and Seth that Titus 3:9 speaks of that produce no fruit for the kingdom. After God judges the serpent in the garden, and everyone totally forgets about the forbidden fruit, save for a sprinkling of verses spread throughout the scriptures that most overlook when they read them, such as the Jeremiah and Isaiah passages I mentioned earlier. Otherwise, the forbidden fruit is essentially never again mentioned in the rest of the Bible. Out of sight, out of mind. Those same lying scribes control biblical narrative that corrupted the law of Moses given to Moses, those lying Pharisees whom have nowadays morphed into the Vatican scribes controlling biblical content via the Roman Edict of Canon, under the authority of Rome's appointed high priest, the Pope of Rome, Rome's current Pope, Pope Francis, whose true name, by the way, is Petrus Romanus, Peter the Roman, the last Pope. God didn't burden us with 613 laws. That is Pharisee scribe corruption, the laws that even they do not keep. Our Father's yoke may be equal, however, is much lighter burden than the heavy burden that the scribes fabricated and placed upon us. And you will read the restored holy law that we are to keep as given by the Messiah to the people in the Essene humane gospel of the Christ. He deceiveth the whole world, if it were possible, even the very elect. Remember? Messiah was an Essene, just like his cousin John the Baptist. The Essene sect, as they were known, totally refrained from eating animal flesh. What was John's diet? It says he ate the fruit of the locust tree and honey and milk of the beasts, adhering to the diet given by God in Genesis 1:29. And we know that Messiah did say, there is no greater man than John. He never ate the forbidden fruit of the flesh of God's innocent creatures. And this is precisely why judgment is on the horizon. Folks still sinning, killing, and eating the forbidden fruit, the flesh of God's innocent creatures. Here are some excerpts that you read in the Bible, where anything about eating of animal flesh is completely omitted from the complete, unedited, and uncorrupted teachings, and those parts are kept out of the Bible by these lying Pharisee scribes. This is what you read in your Bible. But lo, one greater than Moses speaketh truth and is in thy midst. They who know not the true Father cannot know me, nor can they ever come to be near the Father when they reject the Son whom the Father sent forth. Hypocrites, offspring of vipers. Now, this is how it reads complete, rather than a small excerpt of it that you read in your Bible. But lo, one greater than Moses speaketh truth and is in thy midst. Behold, the unleavened bread and the juice of the fruit, and also the oil and the herbs. But they, ignorant of truth, ask, where is the Lamb that Moses commanded? They who know not the true Father cannot know me, nor can they ever come to be near the Father when they reject the Son, whom the Father sent forth. Hypocrites, offspring of vipers, corrupters of the holy law given unto Moses. They imagine that the slaying of beasts and birds and the eating of their flesh will wash them clean. But I tell ye, if the pure waters of the Jordan wash not them clean, neither shall all the streams and seas of the earth make pure their evil souls. Yea, how much less so the blood of the innocent creatures of God. See how they delight in the cries and agonies of the innocent, for they have rejected the household of God for vain traditions of men and devils. Their hearts are hard and their lusts many. Mercy they know not, the sword being their God and riches their king. But I say unto you, if any man knoweth the law of God, and raises a sword against the least of these my brothers and sisters, the innocent creatures of God, he shall himself die by the sword, and see not life. For know ye, I came into the world in the form of every life, and mercy was shewed not. Thus they who work evil unto the least of these my creatures work evil against the Son, and the Father, and the great household of God. Did Adam not speak of me as the bread of life that cometh down from heaven to save the righteous seed? And did not Abel know the pure oblation, and was put to death on account? For Satan entered into Cain, and bloodshed was manifested in the earth, and man and beast cried out to God, and God heareth their cries. But I did not recognize Cain's blood offering, nor did God the evil of Satan, but God grieved over the evil of mankind that spread over the land, even as the waters cover the sea basin. For truly I say to you, for this end I have come into the world, that may put away all blood offering and the eating of flesh. But mankind are wicked, and rejoice in their evil, and change not. For strong is the power of the evil one, and many follow. Therefore tell ye the meek of the earth, that they may know the truth. In the beginning God gave to all the fruits of the trees and the seeds and the herbs, for food, yea, to every man and beast. But those who loved themselves or their fellows more than the true God did corrupt their ways, and introduced every disease into their body, and filled the earth with lust and violence. And unto this day men have changed not, and yea, the holy law did they indeed corrupt to suit their own evil ways. But I kept sending them prophets in their midst, to restore the law, but they added to their evil 100-fold, by taking innocent blood upon themselves and their children, yet boasting in their false gods and idols, and sacrificing the innocents of earth, both man and beast. Here is another. You read this small excerpt in Isaiah 65:25. The lion and the lamb shall feed together, and the lion shall eat grass like the ox, and the dust shall be the serpent's meat. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, saith the Lord. Now, this is how it reads, unedited and uncorrupted. And Yeshua proved to be the humane son of holy parents, in that all the beasts of the field showed respect unto him, and all the birds of the heaven took no fear in him, and even the fishes of the sea rejoiced at the presence of him. None were in fear of him. Yea, the great wild beasts of the desert did indeed perceive the authority of God within him, and did him much service, bearing him from place to place with much gladness and readiness. For a certainty, the spirit of the divine holy law was within him, and he was in the great rest of the Father, being filled with the fruitage of the Holy Spirit, also filled all things around him, and made all things subject unto him. For thus shall yet be fulfilled through him the words of the prophet, the lion shall lie down with the calf, and the leopard with the kid, and the wolf with the lamb, and the bear with the ass, and the owl with the dove, and a child of God shall lead them. And it shall come to pass that none shall hurt or destroy in my holy mountain. For my earth, my sanctuary, shall be full of the knowledge of the Holy One, even as the waters cover the bed of the sea. And it shall come to pass in that day that I will make again and renew a covenant with the beasts of the earth, and the fowls of the air, and the fishes of the sea, and with all created things. For all shall know me, and I will break the bow and the arrow of the hunter, and the sword of the slaughterer, and all the instruments of bloodshed will I banish from the earth, even forever. And I will surely make all of them, my creatures, to lie down in safety and peace, and to live without fear or outcry. For neither shall they hunger nor thirst any more, but be fed and cherished. For even as the sun does rise and set each new day, so shall it be in the land blessed by God, wherein all dwell securely. And I will take unto myself all those elect, and deliver unto them eternal righteousness, and in lasting peace, and in loving kindness. They will know thy true God, and all his love and glory. And the earth shall bring forth in abundance the good corn, and the fresh juice of the grape, and the oil of every seed. And at that time I will certainly say unto them, which were not my people, Thou art my people. And they shall say unto me, Thou art our God alone. For in that day the whole of the earth shall be taught the knowledge of the holy law, and the love of God shall fill the hearts of many, as they rejoice in the fruits of their labor. Thus shall my words stand and come to pass, and all those putting their faith in my words shall never come to disappointment, but be satisfied. Let all who have ears hear, and all that have eyes behold. For the day draws near when such things shall surely come to pass. And Yeshua continued in his mercies towards the people, and many were amazed and astonished at his words and works of charity. For wherever Yeshua journeyed, and whatever thing he did, all goodness and much beauty resulted. For the Spirit of the Eternal All rested upon him, even as myriads of angels ministered unto him. And another, this is a small excerpt that you read in Matthew 21:12-13. And Yeshua went into the temple of God, and cast out all of them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers, and the seats of them that sold doves. And Yeshua said unto them, It is written, My house shall be called a house of prayer, but ye have made it into a den of thieves. Now, the completed, unedited, uncorrupted, rather than a small excerpt. And it came to pass that the Passover ritual of the Jews was at hand, and Yeshua went into Jerusalem from Bethany. And there he found in the temple those who sold sheep, oxen, and doves, and also the money changers awaiting business. And Yeshua looked upon these men in disgust, for he was weary from their continued evils and hard-heartedness. And Yeshua proceeded to drive them all out of the temple, and also loosened the oxen and the sheep, and set free the doves, and then poured out the changers' money, and overturned their tables. And Yeshua said unto them, Thy hands are dripping with blood of innocent creatures of God. Take these things with you, and return no more, and make not my Father's house a house of business, buyers and sellers, and money lovers. It is not written, My house is a house of prayer for all nations, all people. But look, ye have made it into a den of thieves, and filled it with all manner of evil. And Yeshua would not allow any man to carry any vessel of blood through the temple, nor would he allow any animals to be slain for sacrifice. And Yeshua said unto them, Know ye, because of the hardness of thy hearts, pure innocents suffer greatly. Ye are from the ruler of darkness. In this one light exists not, and ye have become agents of darkness in every evil. Yea, ye serve evil and willing hearts and excitement of soul, and ye shall be judged by these unholy standards. For if ye know us of Satan's laws, know also ye shall be punished by them. For with evil things Satan judges evil men of this world, and chastises the children of disobedience. Workers of lawless deeds, how are ye to flee the judgment of Gehenna? Trust ye in thy gods of death and agony, and be ye judged by these false gods, who leadeth ye into darkness and the pit, and feeleth sorry not for thy souls. And the Jews, hearing these words, were angry with Yeshua, and said unto him, What sign shewest thou unto us, and by what authority dost thou doest and sayest these things? Why, for generations we worketh only good to God, and knoweth not an evil deed. And Yeshua answered and said unto them, Liars, again I say unto you, even as I spake to you before this day, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. But the Jews, understanding not his words, said unto him, 46 years was this temple in the making, and wilt thou rear it up in only 3 days? For the Jews understood not that Yeshua spake of the temple of his body, that would be raised in 3 days after his death. For the Jews kneweth not the inner workings of the true church of God, nor did they seek after Yeshua's sayings to know. And after that time the scribes and the priests of the temple sought only how they might do away with Yeshua, for they feared his words, seeing that all the people were receptive to his teachings. For those who mistakenly believe that the Christ was a sacrifice, firstly, I remind you that the Father never commanded a sacrifice of any sort, as written in Isaiah 43:23, as I cited earlier. The Christ did have to die, as that was God's will, but he wasn't a sacrifice. God permitted the Pharisees to murder him, and he went knowingly and willingly to his death because he knew God's purpose to be fulfilled by it. God's purpose of the Christ's death was to fulfill what God promised to our ancestors by raising up Jesus, Acts 13:33. This was to show us proof of the promised resurrection, Messiah being the first as an example to us, to show us what lies ahead for us in the coming resurrection, should we keep the Father's law and walk as the Christ did before us. As I said, Messiah was a Nazarene Essene, and so was his cousin John the Baptist. When King Herod was killing all males aged 2 and under, both John and Messiah were taken into the mountains into the protection of the Essene Brotherhood, a sect known to totally abstain from the eating of animal flesh. And this is why Zechariah was slain by the altar. When he refused to reveal John's whereabouts to Herod's henchmen, because they wanted to kill John as he was under age 2, so they killed Zechariah. If it weren't for the Essenes, we would have no gospel at all today, albeit what we do have has been heavily corrupted by the lying Pharisee scribes in our Bibles. The Essenes preserved the true and complete unedited teachings of the Christ. Therefore, if we want to get the truth, we must go to the Essenes. If you would like to read the unedited, uncorrupted teachings of the Christ, go read the Essene Humane Gospel of the Christ, the Essene Gospel of Peace, and the Essene Gospel of the Holy 12. And you can read these 3 books and more online at www.essene.com. I'll leave a link in the description for you to make it convenient. These are not long books like the Bible, because it is only the unedited teachings of the Christ. I read the Essene Humane Gospel of the Christ in a couple of hours to give you some idea how long these books are to read. Enjoy the reading. I promise you will not be disappointed. Anyone who wants to enter into the kingdom, and I know you all do, then these 3 books are an absolute must-read. Oh, and for anyone who has any doubts about these Essene books, you should be made aware that they align with what is found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. We have been deceived by the lying Pharisee scribes. Be deceived no longer.